The transition continues, that as Donald Trump tries to fill out his cabinet. Infighting also continuing within Team Trump. We'll take a look at that, plus the people who Trump chooses to surround himself with. Then, the flap over Trump's tweet about flag burning. What he said, it is generating as many questions as it is reaction. Also, Chris Christie, he's out of Trump's inner circle, but he is not leaving the Garden State that altogether. He's going to stick around the governor's mansion through the end of his term, made that perfectly clear today. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday night. Well, it's now been 3 weeks since Election Day. Feels longer than that, though, right? Well, anyway, the day-to-day drama of the campaign trail has now given way to a new drama, that as a transition turns. First, plot line here at KellyAnne Conway, the Trump campaign manager and spokesperson for the campaign, as well as transition, going out of her way this weekend, not once, not twice here, but keep on counting, to bash one of her boss's possible nominees for Secretary of State. I'm talking about none other than Mitt Romney.
The number of people who feel betrayed to think that a Governor Romney would get the most prominent cabinet post after he went so far out of his way to hurt Donald Trump. There was the Never Trump movement, and then there was Mitt Romney. I'm all for party unity, but I'm not sure that we have to pay for that with the Secretary of State position.
It got a whole lot of people talking whether or not Conway was going rogue on Trump, or whether Trump was angry even with Conway over those comments. And if it was okay with Conway, dissing Romney, why would Trump in the end allow it, since I find nobody can make an argument to me it doesn't make him look bad no matter what happens now. Either he was forced to take back the nomination, or somebody in his inner circle went out against him. Conway was quick to say her relationship with Trump remains solid. She even tweeted out, because who doesn't nowadays, a photo last night showing her working closely with the Donald in his office and thanking Trump for the, quote, privilege of a lifetime, end quote. For analysis of the drama and all things in the soap opera, let's turn to tonight's No Drama panel. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author; Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County exec and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College; and the king of drama, Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. I kid because I care. Okay, I had these guys yesterday, and Jeannie Zeno, our friend, she claimed, with a little bit of knowledge, that this was pretty much kabuki theater, that Conway was acting on the directives of Team Trump. Now, you should know, as you probably do, Politico's got it, and others saying, no, she went rogue on this one. She's outside the inner circle. She didn't want to be communications director. She didn't want to be press sec. She wanted a higher position, wasn't given it. She's now speaking outside the circle. She's not there for the vetting. Others, the Times and others, say, no. This was not unplanned. This was known. Can you give me any logic why this helps Trump, for her to marginalize a candidate that he's meeting again with today? Because even if he never wanted Romney, and he doesn't choose Romney, some will say, well, it's because Conway shamed him into saying no.
The answer to your question is no. I can't think of any good reason, except that there's a whole set of theories about this. One is that he actually gave her permission to speak her mind, and purposely to set, the raw meat folks out there to settle down while he continued to, to decide whether he's going to do this or not.
Give me I've heard that argument before, and I can see Dominic nodding. What is the upside? If there's internal strife, fine. But if in the end he chooses Romney anyway, even though she said, we're bought and paid for by the establishment, that's not who we were, he looks like he's, that he's going against his base. And on the flip side, if he doesn't go with Romney, it's only because she embarrassed him and shamed him, and he didn't go with his choice because basically he was told not to. He looks weak either way.
No, it's the old reality TV raising its head again. I mean, we've seen that throughout this process. This, the constant, the people coming in and out. We've never seen anything like this, I don't believe, in appointments in the process. And remember, appointments are very critical. You got to check background. You got to do all sorts of other things. Now, Romney's having dinner with Trump tonight. It
The
may
wives
be
as well, and all the rest. The optics look bizarre.
It may be that he simply wanted to embarrass Romney by making it look like he might get this, and then have dinner tonight and saying, "Listen, but you're not going to get it, but let's be friends." I mean, that's a theory as well, that he just did this purposely to drag Romney out and make it look terrible.
You agree that's bizarre?
I mean, that takes too much tactical thinking.
And this also gets into December now. He's got a lot of stuff to do that, it's not doing, like a bad show, a bad episode of Walking Dead here where you're going to humiliate the guy, and you spend 3 days doing it.
Plus, the reality of Donald Trump is that he kind of acts when he wants to act. He doesn't have, I don't think, a strategy necessarily, even in the campaign. He responds. So I find that hard to believe. So the answer is, I don't know.
Any final theories before we move ahead to topic number 2? In transition
I would just put a disclaimer. I thought there's always politicking back and forth on these appointment positions, particularly on cabinet level. So you might be hearing from people who are supporting other candidates for Secretary of State, bad-mouthing what KellyAnne Conway did, or talking up what KellyAnne Conway did.
Everybody has their own agenda. Jockeying in every administration, but no one can remember ever seeing the campaign manager going public on every Sunday morning show she could find to say specifically about Romney, he's not one of us, he shouldn't be there, etc. Again, I get if there was some strategy, but no matter how it's spun, it doesn't make her guy look good at the end of the day.
I think it's a classic good cop, bad cop. And I couldn't agree more. It's the definition of reality TV, which our president-elect loves to engage in, the drama. Richard, I hear you, and I agree with your premise. But do you think KellyAnne Conway has did the impossible? She is going to make millions on top of what she's already made. Do you think she would put that at risk after getting someone like Donald Trump elected president of the United States if he didn't approve of what she was saying?
The only way I could think she would do it, and again, if you believe, the Scarboroughs of the world or the politicos who are certainly not hacks here who don't know what's going on inside, if you believe them, she didn't get the gig she wanted, and she didn't want to be inside the administration. She was tweaked as to some of the directions that were going, which were opposite her counsel. So she said, why not? I'll go there. She hasn't been in the inner circles, at least in Trump Tower, for any of the meetings whatsoever, but I digress. All right. Now, speaking of the auditions for the best-known jobs in the cabinet, Secretary of State here. Right now, it looks like a fight between the 4 figures. The aforementioned Mr. Romney, who returns to Trump Tower, as Scott said, for a dinner date with the wives tonight, and the Donald. Tennessee Senator Bob Corker, head of the Foreign Relations Committee and also critical of Trump during the campaign. Former General and CIA Director David Petraeus, the same David Petraeus who gave classified documents to his mistress as she wrote a bio on him, and the man who won't go away, Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, who Dominic has a personalized photo of. Okay, of those 4, I'll start with you, Dom. Who do you think at the end of the day gets the rose?
I won't pretend to be able to accurately predict what the president-elect is going to do because he is such a wild card, but I would say Corker simply because of the Foreign Relations Committee. On paper, he seems like the better choice. It seems like more and more, Richard, these days that Rudy Giuliani is dead on arrival with this job because there's a question of whether or not he'd be able to get confirmation. Knowing Giuliani the way that I do, he must be banging his head into a wall somewhere because there was no one more loyal than Giuliani, and he is getting stiffed.
And he publicly campaigned for it. Now, Andrew, the perversity is when I look at that list, and we all remember what Trump said about Hillary and the classified documents and the... Okay. But Petraeus on paper seems the most competent. And it seems folks on Capitol Hill would seem the most comfortable with him. He's worked in different administrations. He knows, obviously, foreign leaders. He understands geopolitics. Is it too much of a non-starter what happened?
I wouldn't put anything past the president-elect, but, I mean, if you
think he'd get confirmed?
I think he probably could get confirmed, but...
We could get security clearance.
Keep in mind, James Comey, the FBI director, when he gave the whole thing about Hillary's email the first go-round, when he gave that whole update, he said that what Petraeus did was more egregious than what Hillary Clinton did. Well, if Donald Trump spent the entire campaign saying lock her up and getting people to chant lock her up because of Hillary Clinton's email issue, well, then how does that make Petraeus anything but worse? I mean, look, I I agree with Dominic. I think Corker is probably the most qualified guy there. He's the one who actually has foreign policy experience. So let's rule him out. I mean, I don't know. This is a weird choice of Secretary of State candidates.
And they're all over the place politically.
Well, they are, and with respect to the presidential election, they were all over the place too. It's not, you know, you compare Giuliani and Romney. Right. I mean, it's really interesting, but it may come down to the fact that of all the choices, Giuliani is closest and more loyal than anyone else, and he finally turns to Rudy and says, "Okay, it's yours," because we know Rudy wants it.
Talk about putting him through the ringer.
Yeah, well, and he's had what, a couple meetings at least with Trump as well. You know what? You know what I think though? I think Romney's going to get it. I think tonight. I think you're going to hear about it.
To your point, do you imagine what he put him through? Now, there's even reports that Romney might not have wanted the gig, you know, and this was going through. But you know, Trump won't take the high road out of all of this. He'd be like, he begged me, he groveled. I just couldn't give it to him or whatever. There's going to be some kind of, you know, at the end here. But there are more names here, not just for state, that we're getting. And as we wait for those final names, or actually a whole bunch of the Trump cabinet get filled out, let me give you some idea of Trump's policy focuses from the names he's already selected. And we're going to start with HHS, Health and Human Services. Trump, he selected Georgia Congressman Tom Price. Price, who is a doctor, longtime critic of Obamacare, and he has sought to dismantle the health care reform. He also wants to repeal the expansion of Medicaid, and he wants to privatize Medicare. Price has also voted against the CHIP program, which provides health care to at-risk children. He also has come out vocally against gay marriage when that was passed as well. Trump, he's also selected Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary, notable because she's a longtime advocate for for-profit education, promoting charter schools and using more public tax dollars to pay for private school education. Most of her work has been in Michigan, where test scores in the state's charter schools are among the very lowest across the country. Let's start with Mr. Price here. Let's start with the positive ledger. Everybody says he's a smart guy. Qualified, competent doctor, and more than just people who say repeal it, he actually has a plan to replace it. Now, maybe not everybody's crazy with the plan, but he's thought the thing through, and for the last 6+ years, going on 7 years, he's offered various alternatives. We talked last night politically, there's a lot of states who are going to have a big problem if they did what Representative Price wants to do. But he'll hit the ground day one with a plan on what he'd want to dismantle and turn it into.
Well, and Price is the poster child for repealing Obamacare. So if you wanted to repeal Obamacare, if that was your top priority when it comes to health and human services policy, he's the guy you would pick. That seems to be the general consensus among experts. And so that gives you a clear idea. Forget about what Trump said right after meeting with President Obama. Forget about telling Leslie Stahl that there are parts of Obamacare that he thinks he wants to keep. It now looks like he wants to dismantle the whole thing, at least based off Price. The other link between the nominees that we're seeing, privatization. Privatizing government services and helping companies reap profits off of taxpayer dollars. You're seeing that in the Obamacare replacements, privatizing Medicaid. There's efforts in the House to privatize Social Security. And look at the public education with the Education Secretary nominee. It's all about taking taxpayer dollars and giving it to private businesses.
What I'm going to look for also in Price is who are the biggest advocates. Now, I'm not talking about on Capitol Hill. If you believe the positions he's taken, that he's reflective, he's going to be the most pro-doctor person, not just because he is, but he has stated time and time again, they're not talking to the right people, to the doctors. He also is going to go against, and while everybody hates frivolous lawsuits, he's a huge proponent of the tort reform, which is going directly after suing for malpractice and all the rest, and making the barriers extremely high. So I think you're going to see trial lawyer attorneys screaming about the appointment, and on the flip side, you may have the AMA coming out for him. But again, he's HHS, he's not about making social policy, but what he said against gay marriage, and also what he said against the CHIP program, which I haven't heard anybody think that doesn't help the most at-risk kids. That's going to be a tough sale. Now, he is a member of Congress. He probably won't have that tough a road to get confirmed here, but that's going to come up on the table, too. It's the outside baggage I think he's going to have to answer to.
No, I think you're right. And if you listen to Chuck Schumer, this isn't going to go smoothly at all for the Democratic side. And one has to remember that I think he brings a lot of new kind of concepts to this. And I think that's maybe why Trump picked him. And a lot of his own social issues are not ones that are going to pass through Congress in any event.
Right.
I mean, so it's really, you really have to look at the regulatory scheme, but most importantly, which you've already mentioned, is he has an idea, which would have to be modified, about how to make the health care system, the Obamacare, remove it and change it in a way that is dramatic. And you know, there's nobody who during the election who didn't agree that Obamacare had to be changed.
Absolutely.
The question is, how do you do it?
Even Bill Clinton too. And what's the other point that I didn't mention in here that is of interest is he also has been the biggest critic going in terms of Planned Parenthood. And Trump went out of his way, even in the primary, forget about the general, to defend Planned Parenthood, to defend same-sex marriage, etc. So it's interesting, if you give him the biggest benefit of the doubt, you say this is a Lincoln-esque team of rivals with people who took positions not his own. But I say to those same people, find anybody who's going to agree with all the positions Trump took, and I'd love to meet that guy if his name isn't Rudy Giuliani. Okay, when we come back, which is the bigger worry for Americans? A president who's going on tweeting rants in the middle of the night, or flag burning? Our tweeter-in-chief just ignited yet another firestorm over both of them. We'll analyze both of the issues straight ahead.